Welcome to Creativity Calling, where we bring you informal interviews with exceptionally creative people. Creativity Calling is a service of SongWriting with Soldiers. With today's Creativity Call, here's SongWriting with Soldiers co-founder, Mary Judd. Welcome back to part 2 of our interview with Michael O'Brien.
I was assigned to do a story on the New York hospital burn ward. And I spent a month photographing what happens on the burn unit of New York Hospital and focusing on one particular nurse, Charlotte Sheehan, and telling the story of what's it like for a nurse to work in a critical care unit like a burn unit. And out of everything that I've seen, that's one of the things that stands out because it was so intense, dramatic. And the nurses were the heroines of the unit. And so that's indelibly etched in the mind. And of course, if I had to go and pick one of the sort of famous figures, it would have to be Willie, because in the 80s I ended up spending so much time with him, and I've seen a lot of famous people, but I've never seen anybody as close to being an angel as Willie is. He treated everybody, no matter if they were the bank president or the catering staff, like they were terrific, and he treated everybody so graciously. And what a spirit. And that stuck too, I had to, And it's funny. It's just, Elizabeth and I went down and saw him. I think he's 85 years old now, play for a concert for Beto O'Rourke down on Pound Lake. So, and I think I first photographed him 33 years ago in the 80s.
Wow. Did you get a photograph of him this time? Were you able to?
No, I was 2 miles away. I couldn't get close.
Oh, you got close then. So, that brings up the question that I wanted to ask you earlier. When you mentioned just loving to take portraits of people, and that the storytelling aspect of it. So someone like, with the nurses, you told us the story, kind of what came out in that hospital. And someone like Willie Nelson or the other, do you feel like you have, and how do you find their story and put it in one photograph? I know you take many photographs, and we see the one. But what do you zero in on?
If you ask me to sit down and write a paragraph in English and make it interesting and grammatical, and it's so hard for me. I mean, I write it 3 or 4 different times, and I stumble the words. I don't have parallel construction. But when I put a camera up to my eye, it just, everything flows, and it just, a button goes on, and it's almost like I'm on an automatic. So if I break it down and say, what's the thought process for doing it, I'm stumped.
Right.
But, the first thing, everything, I mean, photography is about light, and the way if the light's coming from behind the person, in front of the person, through a window, if it's contrasty, if it's soft, whatever, you're looking at it on. And I've always noticed how light hits faces. If someone like in an airplane, that's one beautiful light coming in from those side little portholes. I've just always been mesmerized and fascinated. And you see if the person turns their head just a slight angle, it makes all the difference in the world, and it's magical. So the light coming in from the porthole of the window of the plane, lighting half of the face, and they turn a little bit more towards the window, and it lights up the second eye, and it makes all the difference in the world. Yeah. So, but you know, it's you know, the thing I said, I always think, gosh, I wish I could be a good writer too. And I said, please, Elizabeth, my wife, because he writes beautifully and effortlessly, and she'll write an email or something like a paragraph. I said, it would take me all day to do this. And and I huff and puff and grit my teeth and try really hard, but writing is difficult. And photography, it's there's a few things that you have to learn to do in a camera that the eye does naturally, and adjust to that. But after that, it's never been hard. It's just been something, and I love doing it. So that's a babbled answer.
No, it's not. It's the right answer. It's the truth. It's the truth, and I think that's what it comes out in your photographs. And any of us who know you, and everyone who's been at a retreat knows it through the songs and through the undefinable parts of when we just are in flow and when we're in sync with what we're tapping into. And when I was listening to you, I don't know if other people, when they listen to this, will relate it, but the way you described that very first time you saw the photo emerging in the dark room, and the way you described that being on a plane, it's like it's just happening for you all over the place, seeing the person emerge or the content emerging each time. And sometimes it's verbal in writing, and sometimes it's visual, and it's just interesting to hear it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's rare, it's rare to see a visual person also have a writing ability too. I mean, a few do, but there seems to be something about having the visual wiring or the verbal wiring. But the whole process of taking a picture, as it's indescribable, is it reminds me of being in there doing the work for SongWriting With Soldiers. It reminds me of that because watching the songwriters work with the soldiers and the vets, it's the same thing. I said, they just do it, and where does it come from? It's very magical, and they just go into it and flow with the process, and out comes a song.
Yeah. So we'll jump ahead to that question, and then I'll come back to a couple others. This work with SongWriting with Soldiers, how has it affected you?
Well, it's after I go to a retreat, it's always I come out feeling inspired, and I get inspired because of all of the really beautiful creative energy that goes in it, and it's transformative in the sense of both for the participants and for the songwriters, and even and the staff, and I mean even the people cooking the food for the whole group. It's just an energizing, positive experience. And the last two retreats that I photographed in Belton in Arizona, I haven't been doing the portraits. It's really going back to what I did at Life magazine and sort of providing a narrative of moments that describes a story. And I often say that if I'm doing it right, and this is the way I did it at Life, is, very quickly I just become the fly on the wall, and everybody forgets I'm there. And I'm just trying to be at the right place and anticipate the right moment to tell the story.
Yeah, well, we're as always, we've been really blessed, and Darden's had some great connections with photographers that got it going too, and I do want to just say how grateful we are to have you and many that you have trained working with us as well, because as you know, what we're all seeing and experiencing at these retreats is just far beyond what any of us expect when we walk in every time. So to have you and your keen eye and heart able to capture a lot of it for us to be able to look at again and be reminded of it is just such a gift.
Yeah, well, I love doing it. I love being there. I love being a part, and I think, hey, I'm lucky I get to go and hang out with 3 or 4 different songwriters and see them work and watch the songs being born and connect to the participants. And you've been been great in guiding it and setting the tone for the retreat. And it's like lining up a car going down the road. You got to get it in the right direction at the right speed with the right temperament and all that. So and there could be some obstacles, and there's some gullies on the left and on the right, and there's a cow up in the road. So it's pretty amazing what you've been able to do too. Garden.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and it is, as we all know,
I think there's a lot of creativity in that.
Oh yeah, creativity and bravery and humor, definitely. No, it's been a ride and collaborative in so many ways, no doubt about it. And you brought up obstacles in the road and gullies on the side, or potholes or cows. I know that is one thing a lot of people wonder about is how do you, Michael O'Brien, navigate, or like what if you're willing, what's been a cow in your road or a dangerous turn, or just something that might have thrown you off and you've had to bounce back from it. Because we all know the creative arena right now in photography and music, in a lot of ways there are challenges. So how do you navigate it?
So, I never, young photographers come to me and say, I want to have your career. And I have to tell them that, my whole career was built on the economy of the print publication business, which has been disrupted, and, Life magazine, National Geographic had healthy circulations, good advertising, and that provided budgets to send photographers and reporters all over. And that world has changed dramatically. So photographers working in the digital world have a harder time. I grabbed hold of a camera, and I never had a career plan. Okay, first I'm going to work for a newspaper, get the experience. National Geographic recruits from newspapers, so that will give me good visibility. Then I'll work for National Geographic. I'll work for Life.
Right.
I'll work for other magazines. I never had that plan. It all just happened. And there's a good friend of mine, and he said, I have one line of it. He was a photographer, an artist, and he said one line of advice, and his advice was, take good pictures, and those pictures will take care of you. So that in one sentence, I didn't even have that sentence, but that's what I did, because the work I did on the newspaper had visibility, and that got noticed by Life and National Geographic, and I was able to take the next step in a career. And after doing that and establishing myself in New York, I was able to leave the city and move down to Austin, where we could raise a family easier.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it never was like, sketched out in 5 years increments or anything. It was just, I fell in love with it and grabbed hold of the camera, and it shot me through life.
Yeah, putting it that way is it's such a great example of when you're loving what you're doing, obstacles are not necessarily, they're not the same as they are when you've got a plan, and it's done more for the plan than the passion. Obstacles they just may not really seem like, they're just another thing to maybe take a picture of. A cow on the road.
The cow on the road, the gully on the right, the rut on the right.
Right. Definitely. Okay, so go ahead. Add more.
No. I'm trying to.
Have you ever had a period where you had some doubts or needed to revive yourself or get inspired?
I think towards the, if I had any doubts, it was as the business changed. My favorite thing was working for different magazines and getting the assignments and getting to go out and photograph minor league baseball or Destiny's Child, everything. But as the print industry started becoming less vital and there were less assignments, I think that was harder, to. I mean, exactly. So what happened? A good story, and was that the assignments, the editorial, which were my passion and my love, in the early 2000s were drying up, and I wasn't getting as much work, and so my wife said I was a man without a purpose, and so,
which is tough. We all know that.
Yeah. Yes. And everybody has to pivot and morph and change, and I think I wasn't doing that. I was stuck, kind of depressed at the lack of work and everything. And Elizabeth, my wife, who's a writer and also a therapist, said, there's a wonderful organization that I've written for their newsletter called Mobile Loaves and Fishes. And it started by a homeless man and 5 other gentlemen. And the idea was to take a truck out and make sandwiches and go down and distribute them to the homeless people in Austin. Now it's and this is back in the early 2000s, and they started in the 80s. And so they're pretty viable. And she says, why don't you go help them out? Why don't you see, you like the guy who founded it, Alan Graham, he's inspirational and everything. See if you can do something for them and start worrying about yourself and your career. So I went over and I knew Alan, and he said, look, man, he said, I'd like to, get you to do some pictures of the people that we serve, the homeless people. And he took me down and helped me he got me set up on a church on the east side of Austin that served meals and gave them a place to sleep on a couple of nights a week. And so I started going down with one of those large format cameras, like the old timey cameras where the black cloth goes over your head, and I would ask the people, that Mobile Loaves and Fishes served, if they'd mind posing for a picture. And I just started making these pictures, and the purpose was to help Alan and to have some photographs to use for fundraising and for the purposes Mobile Loaves and Fishes. And I started showing them to the designer DJ Stout, who is a famous designer in Austin and was my art director at Texas Monthly. And he says, man, he says, we have to publish something for our firm, and he said, I'd love to take a collection of these pictures and publish them and design a booklet and to use it as a fundraiser for Mobile Ocean Fishes. I don't know. I think we raised $20,000 or $25,000.
Wow.
With the booklet and auction and everything.
That's part 2 of our interview with Michael O'Brien. You've been listening to Creativity Calling, a service of Songwriting with Soldiers. Executive Director Kristen Starling, co-founders Mary Judd and Darden Smith. Our mission statement: we transform lives by using collaborative songwriting to expand creativity, connections, and strengths. Learn more at songwritingwithsoldiers.org.